From Dawn Till Dusk. Chapter 1. The Lone Cowboy. The arid land of the Wild West stretched to the horizon, endless plains covered with dry grass and sparse bushes. A lone cowboy named Jack Ryder slowly rode his trusty horse, leaving only a dusty trail behind. His face was hidden under a wide-brimmed hat, and his cold blue eyes carefully scanned the surroundings. Jack was used to loneliness and the dangers that lurked at every turn. Chapter 2. No Choice. The sun was setting when Jack noticed a small group of men ahead. They were standing by a wagon, apparently discussing something important. Jack was about to ride past when one of the men shouted, "Hey, cowboy, come over here!" Jack hesitated but approached. Before him stood a gang of robbers, their faces covered in dirt and beards. The gang leader, a tall and muscular man named Red, squinted at Jack. "What luck? Jack Ryder himself. There's a good bounty on your head, but we're not interested in that." "We've heard you're a good shot," Red said. "We need your help with something. In return, we'll split the loot fairly. And before you answer, know that this isn't a request." Jack couldn't afford to refuse. He knew that if he declined, they would kill him on the spot. Red was a man of his word and didn't waste time with idle threats. Weighing all the pros and cons, Jack nodded. "All right, I'm with you," he replied. Red grinned and clapped him on the shoulder. "That's right, cowboy. Tomorrow morning we're robbing a train. But for now, rest and gather your strength." Chapter 3. The Night Before the Attack. The night passed peacefully. Jack lay on the ground, leaning against his saddle, and pondered what awaited him. He didn't like the idea of working with strangers, but he had no choice, and his pockets hadn't seen money in a long time. He looked around at the other gang members. Among them was Sean, tall and skinny, with a perpetual cigarette in his mouth. He always joked and laughed, hiding his nervousness. Bill, sturdy and silent, was a jack of all trades and loved tinkering with mechanisms. Lucas, young and ambitious, always tried to prove his worth to the gang. And finally, Thomas, the oldest, with a deep scar on his face from a previous encounter with the law. They all sat around the campfire, talking, laughing, playing cards, and discussing women they'd met in brothels. Jack sighed heavily and, closing his eyes, fell asleep. Chapter 4. The Train Stop. In the morning, they took positions on a hill from which the railroad track was visible. After some time, a rumble was heard, and a black train appeared on the horizon. A large and powerful locomotive pulled 6 interconnected windowless cars. The train moved closer and closer, slithering like a black snake through the dead desert. The robbers prepared for the attack. As the train approached, Jack and the gang noticed 6 well-armed guards on the roof of the last car. Red pointed at them and said, "That's our target, let's go!" They quickly surrounded the train and engaged in a firefight with the guards. As expected, Jack proved to be an excellent shot. Soon, the guards were neutralized. The robbers stopped the train by pulling the emergency brake. To their surprise, they found no engineer. The gang began breaking into the car doors. Chapter 5. The Trap Car. When the car doors opened, they were met with an unexpected sight. Inside was a luxurious salon without windows, filled with expensive items and gold jewelry. The robbers, including Jack, couldn't believe their eyes and began greedily gathering the treasures. Suddenly, the car doors slammed shut with a loud crash. Not understanding what had happened, the robbers rushed to the exit, but the doors were locked. Red furiously tried to break them down with his shoulder, but to no avail. The doors were as sturdy as a safe. At that moment, another door to the adjacent car unexpectedly opened. Inside, darkness and silence reigned. But each gang member, including Jack, felt something sinister. Red approached the open door to see inside, but suddenly, figures emerged from the darkness, more like nightmares. Vampires, with their sharp fangs and burning eyes, attacked the robbers. Chapter 6. Vampires. They looked terrifying. Their skin was pale, almost dead, their eyes burned with red fire. Long fangs gleamed in the dim candlelight. Each moved with inhuman speed and strength. Among them stood a leader, a huge man with long black hair and a long cloak. He stood at the end of the car, watching as the gang desperately tried to survive. Jack couldn't believe his eyes. The creatures he had read about in children's scary books were running at him with bloodthirsty glares. Jack and the others opened fire on them without sparing bullets, but the bullets did not cause significant harm to the vampires. They pierced their bodies, but the vampires only grinned wickedly in response. In desperation, the robbers rushed at the enemies with knives and any makeshift weapons they could find. Chapter 7. Fight for Survival. The battle was brutal. Jack grabbed a wooden stick and struck one of the vampires in the heart, piercing his chest. The vampire screamed loudly and turned to dust. Seeing this, the other robbers followed his example, using anything they could find: wooden crates, sharp furniture fragments. One gang member, Lucas, was seized by a vampire who sank its fangs into his neck, and in a moment, Lucas's body went limp like a scarecrow hanging in a field. "Look!" Jack shouted, pointing forward. The gang looked through the darkness of the cars towards the locomotive and saw a faint light. "There's a light," Jack continued. "I think the only way out is there." Red looked at his gang and nodded to them. "We'll break through there." The entire gang moved into the next car. They advanced through the cars, each presenting new dangers. Sean and Thomas stuck together, covering each other. Bill moved forward, ready with a knife, killing 2 more vampires. 3 more bloodsuckers attacked the gang, but Jack impaled one mid-air with his improvised stake, and it instantly turned to ash. Red grabbed 2 by the necks. While he held them, the others pierced their hearts. The car was cleared, and Red commanded everyone to move to the next one. Chapter 8. The Strength Car. The next car they entered was dimly lit, and it was eerily silent. In the center of the car stood 2 tall, very strong twins, their muscles rippling under their skin like snakes, and their eyes burning with fury. Sean, wasting no time, rushed forward. But one of the vampires grabbed him and effortlessly lifted him into the air, then forcefully slammed him against the wall. Sean fell, showing no signs of life. Jack, Red, Bill, Thomas, and Lucas, realizing the danger, rushed into the fight. The enemy was not only strong and enormous, but also fast. No matter how hard the gang tried to inflict any damage on the twins, they were outmatched in every way. It seemed the twins were playing with the gang like toys, throwing them around, as if waiting to see who would break next. The twins were so engrossed in their game that they didn't notice Sean on the floor, cutting the tendon on one of their legs with his knife, causing the vampire to fall. When the second twin was distracted by Sean, crushing his head underfoot, the 5 rushed at the fallen vampire and pierced his heart. The other twin couldn't react in time, and Red pierced his heart too. The twins turned to ash, and the 5 were 1 car closer to the exit. Chapter 9. The Passion Car. The next car was dark and quiet. The gang sat down to catch their breath. Bill noticed that the air smelled pleasant and sweet. Suddenly, from under the couches where the gang was sitting, girls began to appear, incredibly beautiful, with thin veils sliding over their perfect bodies. Their faces were angelic, their eyes glowed softly, their lips inviting with sweet expressions. Nowhere in the world's brothels could one encounter such girls. The men seemed to have forgotten all that had happened just minutes ago. They smiled at the girls, their eyes filled with admiration, love, and lust. They couldn't be blamed, as each of these girls was perfection. Their naked breasts were round and firm, their bodies slender and graceful, and their skin smelled of floral tenderness and desire. The girls, whispering soft and melodic voices, approached closer, hypnotizing with their movements and beauty. The robbers couldn't take their eyes off their graceful figures and round hips. When the girls got close enough, they dropped their veils, revealing their perfect bodies. The five were completely under their spell. Moments later, the girls' sweet faces twisted, and they attacked the robbers with unprecedented ferocity. Thomas and Lucas were the first to be torn apart, their screams drowned by the vampire's screeches. Jack and Bill, resisting the hypnosis, began to fight back against the vampire girls. Jack, gripping a wooden stake, dealt deadly blows, shattering hearts. Bill, using the remaining knife, pierced the chest of the last attacker. Only Red remained under the spell. Soon they were alone in the car, surrounded only by the bodies of their two comrades and the vampire's ashes. Only then did Red come to his senses and mutter, "Damn, I was ready to die in their arms." Chapter 10. The Final Fight. The last car was brightly lit, and in its center stood the main vampire, with a door and a window behind him through which the almost dark street was visible. Huge, with long black hair, the main vampire was surrounded by an aura of darkness and power. Jack, Red, and Bill, understanding that this was their final battle, prepared for the ultimate confrontation. The vampire rushed forward with incredible speed, attacking with claws and teeth. Jack managed to dodge and strike his back, but the vampire, feeling no pain, retaliated, sending Jack crashing into the car wall. Bill tried to attack from another angle, but the vampire caught his hand and broke it effortlessly. Jack got up and grabbed a wooden stake that remained from previous battles. He saw Bill, clutching his broken arm, trying to deliver a final blow, but was killed when the vampire pierced his chest with his fist. Rage filled Red. He charged and tackled the vampire to the ground. "Jack, drive the stake into his damn heart!" Red shouted as he held the vampire down. Jack ran with the stake, but the vampire grabbed Red's head, twisting and tearing it off his body. As the vampire stood up, Jack punched him in the face, but his fist landed right in the vampire's mouth. The vampire bit down, his fangs tearing Jack's skin. Blood gushed from Jack's hand, but in that moment, he managed to drive the stake into the vampire's heart. The vampire screamed and tried to break free, but Jack held him, pushing the stake deeper. Eventually, the vampire let out a final scream and turned to dust, leaving Jack standing alone in the empty car. Jack, breathing heavily, looked at his injured hand. He didn't notice the bite, but the burning sensation was undeniable. Pouring lantern oil all over the cars, he set the train on fire. Jack wearily exited the car and watched as the monstrous train burned. Chapter 11. A New Path. The bitten hand felt strange. While the train burned, Jack drank an entire flask of water, only to vomit it back up. Not fully understanding what was happening to him, Jack tiredly mounted his horse. Casting one last glance at the burning train, he rode away, burdened with 2 bags of gold and valuables from the train. Exhausted by an unprecedented thirst, he rode on, leaving behind the wrecked train and the dead bandits. The Wild West held many secrets, and now one of them had forever changed the life of the lone cowboy Jack Ryder. The end. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you for your attention.